As a personal trainer, I often hear women in perimenopause and beyond say the same thing. I know I need to strength train, but I don't know what to do. This is a 4-part series on the 4 different areas that we really want to be focusing in on as women as we age. And today we are focusing on hips. Now, this is a complement to a podcast episode I did on the Graced Health podcast called Strength Training Essentials for Women in Perimenopause and Beyond. So if you are one of the ones saying, I know I need to do it, but I don't know what to do, here are 4 exercises that can help your hip complex strengthen and be more stable. The first 2, we will go down on the ground. I will meet you there. We actually have a lot of muscles in our hip complex. So what we're going to try and do is get all of them, not just our glutes or not just our hips, but we'll start down on the ground on our side. I want you to lay down if you have a mat, then put your feet, your hips, and your shoulders along the back of the mat. It is very common for us to bring our feet forward. So do that check. Make sure that they are back. For me, when I line it up, I actually feel like I'm arching, but we want to be aligned. From here, I want you to engage that core. You can put your hand on your belly if you need to. I have my elbow bent. If you want to pull it up, you can do that as well. Take your toes, kiss them together, and then lift your heel. So that is what is called an internal rotation. Now, with that same direction of your heel up and your toe down, I want you to lift that foot about 1 foot in the air. From here, it's going to be pretty small. We're going to lift it up about 8 inches and then come back down. So we are pulling the leg up and down. The key is to keep that internally rotated. If you turn your toes up, you're going to activate those quads, which are not a bad muscle to strengthen, but that's not our focus here. Keep that core engaged, and you can even put your hand on that hip and you should feel that muscle turning on. So keep that rotation in. Do that about 10 times on one side, and then you can do the other side. And I would say start off with just the 10 reps. If you are ready to progress to more, you can start doing more like 2 to 3 rounds of that. Our next exercise for our hip complex is our glute bridges. For that, we're going to lay down on our back. Now, let me tell you something. This is a real common thing I see. I see people getting on their back, they bend their feet, and they just start to go up and down. No. Okay, this is a very intentional movement. So first, I want you to pretend that your muscles, your transverse abdominis, are pulling up, and that is what is tucking your hips. It's not even the glutes that are doing the work, but use that transverse abdominis. From here, you're just going to lift very slightly, squeeze your glutes, and then release back down. Keep your abdominals engaged as you lift up and release everything as it goes back down. So everything is released. Pull the core in, squeeze your glutes coming up. So this is a very different motion and range of motion than just lifting up and down. So it is not all about the height here. Higher is not necessarily better. We're just going a little bit and then coming back down. You should feel that in your core as well as your glutes. And the beauty of this exercise in particular is we're getting both sides. We're getting that front side and that back side. Release back down, and let's head up for our final 2 exercises. For our third exercise, we will just do a basic squat. Now, a couple points of form that I want you to pay attention to. I'm going to go sideways so you can see everything. Roll your shoulders back and down so you're engaging those lats, and slightly tuck your hips under. I have a tendency to have that lordosis, that more of an arch in my back. So I have to intentionally activate my core to bring myself into more of a neutral position. Then bend your knees and press your butt out, not going forward, but press it out, having your weight in between your toes and your heels, but you should be able to wiggle your toes as you go down, and coming up, slightly squeezing those glutes. The goal is, as you go down, you want your shins and your torso to be in parallel alignment. So if you're hinging forward a lot, then you're not getting as much in those quads as you want to, which of course will help support those hips. So keeping your torso up as you go down, coming back up. By the way, if you have heard, or maybe you used to work out a long time ago and said, keep your knees behind your toes, that's actually a little bit outdated, particularly as it relates to body weight movement. So if you are just doing your squats with your body weight, I am totally fine with you taking those knees over your toes as long as it's not hurting. Now, of course, as you get used to doing those squats, you're also watching your knees so they don't want to flare out. They don't want to flare in. You don't want your feet to go out or in. Everything is in alignment. I have a tendency to bring my hand here, but of course, if you have weights, you can take your weights down by your side. You can hold them in the center, or you can hold them up. So progress as much as you need to. However, if you are just doing this for the first time or the first time in a long time, then I highly recommend you get the form right with your body weight and then add weight. Don't go too much, otherwise you might get injured. Our fourth movement is a standing hip hinge that will progress into a Romanian deadlift. So again, just like with the squat, we're gonna roll our shoulders back. And I want you to imagine that your upper body is a door and it is just folding over. So from here, we're gonna again activate that core and hinge forward, keep your ears in line with your shoulders, no dropping down, and press your hips back as you go. You can absolutely slightly bend your knees as you hinge forward, but then as you come up, we want to straighten them and again, slightly squeeze your glutes. It doesn't have to be everything nice and tight, just activate. So hinging forward, chest leading the way. I like to say, look out and about 6 feet in front of you to keep your ears in line with your shoulders, and then coming back up, really activating that core, pulling it together and coming back up, nice squeezed glutes. One reason we want to squeeze the glutes is to release our hip flexors, which our hip flexors are flexing when we go down. And so we want to come all the way up. One thing I see often is we'll go down in that hinge and then I'll see people coming up to about here and not all the way. So I've come up to that full reset position. As you get more comfortable with this, you can absolutely add some dumbbells. If you do not have a lot of dumbbells sitting around, because let's be honest, they're expensive, I'm a huge fan of resistance bands. And what you can do with those resistance bands is actually put them underneath your feet and then create your own resistance. So for me, with this one, I will cross them just to kind of add, it makes it a little bit easier with that weight being evenly distributed. But from here, we will just hinge down, keep the resistance, and coming back up. And that is what is going to encourage your glutes, your hamstrings to engage, and then of course your core as well, which all will support that lumbo-pelvic hip complex, which is one of our vulnerable areas as we get older, particularly as it relates to osteopenia and osteoporosis. With all of those movements, I would say start with 10 reps, see how they feel, and adjust from there. If it's too much, then don't do as much. If you need more, then you can do more. If you get to the point where you can do like 15 reps really easily of the squats, of the RDLs, then it's time to add some resistance. Again, dumbbells are fine, barbells are fine. Resistance bands are a really nice transition into those, again, because they don't cost as much and they're easily transportable. I will link to the ones that I use and love down below, but really any kind of resistance that you can find is fine. If you are wanting to strengthen those hips and the muscles surrounding it, add those 4 movements into your rhythm of movement, or start with that rhythm. If you're looking for more, stay tuned and we will have exercises that focus on our spine and posture next.